Mr. Secretary, thank you for the opportunity to brief you on the 2011 crisis in Libya and our intervention there, and also how it relates to the current crisis going on in Erewhon and how we can use the responsibility to protect doctrine to support potential intervention, how we used that doctrine to support intervention in 2011, and key lessons we can take away from that situation to make this potential approach better. Now, it is important to understand that the Erewhon government is fighting an extremist group. This extremist group is very anti-West in their rhetoric and their agenda, but Erewhon also has close ties to Russia and China. This makes the situation wildly complex. There are a lot of geopolitical facets involved here, but the important thing is to focus on this intervention in Libya in 2011 and see if we can apply the same thing here in the Erewhon crisis, where the Erewhon government is committing to completely wipe out an entire ethnicity because of actions taken by the extremist group that represents that ethnicity in the region. Now, what I would like to focus on is, while it was a short-term success when the UN Security Council authorized coordinated strikes in Libya to stop Gaddafi's efforts to massacre civilians, what does not get talked about a lot is the long-term instability this created. Now, some people would say, what is the point of even considering long-term stability if we have to go in and save civilians right now? This point is valid, but I raise another to this question. What is the point of protecting civilians right now in the short term if we're just going to go into places and create long-term instability that will likely produce the same exact issue we are dealing with now? That is what we are seeing in Libya, where long-term instability has resulted in certain extremist groups coming to more power, gaining more influence. This is exactly what we do not want to happen as a result of potential intervention with the Erewhon crisis. One thing we do need to consider here is that Erewhon's government has close ties with Russia and China. The extremist group they're fighting does not like the West. They are anti-West. This does not matter in regards to responsibility to protect and our obligation, not only in the United States, but with our allies, to protect human rights across the globe. We did it in 2011 with Libya, and it is a possibility that we must do the same thing here in Erewhon to protect innocent civilian life. Now, one thing I would like to focus on here in regards to long-term stability is that our approach needs to be more strategic. It needs to be all-encompassing and potentially broader. Now, potential steps we can take regarding U.S. intervention in Erewhon, specifically under responsibility to protect the grounds, is that we're faced with a similar situation in how it was in Libya, where the government is committing atrocities. Now, instead of going in and immediately demanding a regime change, authorizing strikes with drones and other military weapons, it would be smart for us to segue into a more strategic long-term approach. What I mean by this is we have an opportunity here to prevent further violence, to prevent further instability, to prevent extremist groups from rising after we intervene. Now, to successfully intervene, we must first ensure that an achievable goal is in place, and this achievable goal needs to be focused on protecting civilians. Now, the important thing about this is we must focus on the civilians. Regime change can come later, and we need to focus on the civilians. Now, a targeted humanitarian intervention, likely through a no-fly zone or certain corridors that we can use in provision of aid, could be effective here. International support could be garnered to ensure legitimacy in our approach and to show Erewhon that we are in lockstep here. This is not a one-party thing. The globe is in lockstep with preventing another human rights atrocity in Erewhon, similar to what we saw in Libya. Now, these methods will only be effective if they are coordinated, if our allies join us, if the UN Security Council can come to a resolution that recognizes these efforts. Now, importantly, the U.S. should have a clear post-conflict plan. This is the exact lesson I would like to take away from the Libya crisis, as we did not have a plan and it resulted in instability. This could include local peace-building efforts. It could include a certain fund set aside before we even intervene that we'll use to rebuild a territory that could possibly be destroyed. These are things we must consider. We do not want to go in, intervene, blow up certain places, and say we protect civilians while ruining the land they live on and allowing extremist groups to rise as civilians cling to certain groups that promise the world in regards to rebuilding and restructuring the peace that was once there in Erewhon. Now, we must recognize Erewhon's close ties to Russia and China. We may see obstacles there to a successful intervention in regards to a UN Security Council vote, and these are things we must keep in mind. With no significant U.S. commercial or security interests in the country, public support for military intervention may be lacking, and that is why we must get ahead of these issues, especially as it relates to the extremist group's anti-West agenda and the government's ties with Russia and China. Now, in conclusion, the intervention in Libya under R2P had short-term success. We saved civilian life, but at the end of the day, it created long-term instability that the United States must adhere to in the plan we currently have. Thank you.